Hey, I'm Adam Jusko from ProudMoney.com, and in this video we are going to talk about whether having an account in collections and then paying off or making a settlement on that account helps your credit score, and then we're going to talk about some related issues having to deal with collection agencies as well. But before we do that, I would ask you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you have not already, and if you have already, I thank you for doing so. So if you've had an unpaid bill in the past, whether it's a credit card bill or a loan or whatever, and it got 30, 60, 90, 120 days past due, you may have gotten to a point where that credit card company or finance company charged off the account, which basically means they said, we give up. This person is not going to pay, and we're just going to write it off as bad debt, for tax purposes. And then what they end up doing is when they charge it off, they then sell that debt basically to a collections agency to try and get a little something for it, a very small percentage, and then that collections agency takes over, and then they sort of own your debt, or at least they own, the ability to try to collect on that debt. So they may, say you have a $1,000 debt, collection agency may pay the credit card company or whoever 50 or 100 bucks to become, sort of the new master of that debt, and the credit card company, they take that little bit to try and get something back for the money that you didn't pay, but then they kind of wash their hands of it, and the collection agency takes over. So the question is, once your account is in collections, does it make sense for you to pay that collections agency in terms of trying to get your credit score back in shape? Because when you have a account charged off, you can lose a ton of points on your credit score. You could lose 100 points if you have something charged off. So is it going to help you if you pay off that collections agency, since they're not the original the original lender, and they're not the one that charged it off? What good does it do you to pay off that collections agency, right? Well, so the short answer is that paying off debt to a collections agency, even though they're not the original lender, can help your credit score, although it's not going to help your credit score get to the point where it was before that charge off. So if you have lenders, in the future who use sort of the latest FICO and Vantage score formulas, the way that a collection agency's debt is sort of looked at is, if you have paid off that collections agency, then essentially that's an account on your credit report, but it doesn't hurt you in the calculation of your credit score. So while paying off the collections agency doesn't mean you're sort of getting bonus points, what it's sort of doing is taking away some negative points, because now is treated as neutral, even though the bad things that happened from the initial charge off are still going to be in your credit report, and they're still going to factor into your credit score. So it's not like paying off the collection agency somehow makes it all go away. That is not the case at all. But your score can go up if you make either pay off completely or make a deal with the collections agency to pay some reduced price that can help your credit score. Now, some people will tell you that one thing you should do with a collection agency is try to negotiate what they call pay for delete settlements. And what that means is you try to, you had a collections agency and they're coming after you for this debt that, initially was with a credit card company or some other finance company. And what you say to them is, okay, well, what if I pay this off and in exchange you delete the fact that I had this thing in collections from my credit report? So we'll make a deal here. And, then it could be either pay off my complete debt to you, the collections agency, or I pay off some portion of it if you will agree to delete this from my credit report. Now, technically, the collections agencies can do this, but they also are lying, because they have told the credit reporting agencies already that you owe this debt. So if you pay off, all of it or a portion of it to the collections company, and then they go back to the credit reporting agency and have it deleted, what they're essentially telling the credit reporting agency like TransUnion or Experian or Equifax is, oh, we made a mistake. This person didn't actually have this debt. So they're essentially lying. when they do that. So when you are doing a pay for delete, you're asking them to, basically lie about what happened to your debt in exchange for you paying some of this off. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't cry any tears for, collections agencies. They're not the most above board people by any stretch of the imagination. So I don't necessarily think pay for delete is the worst thing in the world, but the danger of doing pay for delete is in the fact that what you're doing is you're trying to strike a deal with, a company that's not particularly trustworthy. So, you could get everything in writing. You could come to this, agreement, and what could end up happening is they take your money. They don't do anything with the credit report to fix it. And, if you went to the credit reporting agency and said, hey, I did this pay for delete, the credit reporting agency says, well, that sounds unethical. We're not going to do anything about it. We don't care. That's not how it works. You don't do pay for delete. If you had that debt, it should be marked off as that you paid it, but it should still show up on your credit report. So, you can end up paying your money thinking you're getting a pay for delete and then end up getting nothing. Now, some people have, had success with it, but I just want you to understand what the potential downsides are of it and the fact that there's not a whole lot of recourse if the collections company doesn't actually come through and remove that item from your credit report. Now, regardless of the credit score effect that you might get from paying off a debt that is in collections, it still makes sense for you to try to pay off this debt if you can. If you don't have the money for it, then this should not be your priority, and we'll get to that in a second. But if you can pay it off, it still makes sense to do it because your credit score is not the only thing that matters in terms of, how a lender in the future may look for you. It's not everything, and we've talked about this in other videos as well. So in some cases, sure, if you're getting a credit card with a very low credit limit or whatever, maybe it's just all automated and they just look at your credit score. But if you're, going for an auto loan, or you're going for a mortgage or something, where they're going to look deeper, where they're actually going to look not just at your credit score, but they're actually going to look at your credit report and look at what you've done in the past. That's when they're going to see those items on your credit report. And if you have something in collections that has been sitting there and you have not paid it off, well, then that's going to look a whole lot worse than if you had something charged off and it went into collections and then you didn't pay that either. Because it basically means you had a debt that you just never paid, right? So you've got a debt that's still sitting out there. So yes, it's hurting your credit score, but it's also hurting you if someone looks further on your credit report, where if you've paid off that debt, even if it hasn't done a whole lot for your credit score, it still makes you look better if there's a manual review of your credit report going forward. So if you have, if you want to get right and you have the money to do so, sort of the process that you should do, number one, with the collections agencies, you want to verify that they actually have control of your account, because what often happens is one company will buy from the bank or whoever that charged it off, and they'll try for a while to collect from you, and if that doesn't work, they'll sell it off again to somebody else and get a little bit money back, and just they're going to say, okay, well, I couldn't do it either, but maybe I can get a little money back from this next guy and this next. It's like a terrible chain where you get further and further toward the bottom feeders, and the further it goes down, the less ethical and more terrible the people are that end up owing your debt. So anyway, you want to verify that whoever it is that is contacting you actually has control of your account. So if you do pay, and if you do some sort of settlement with them, that actually is going to get you where you want to go in terms of getting it paid off and off of your account. So as far as these agencies are concerned, and you may know this already, it's not always about paying off the full debt. So if you have if there's smaller debts and you can afford to pay, great, go ahead and do it. It would be better to get, pay 100% of, I don't know, 150 or 200 bucks or whatever, than, have to, mess around with trying to come to some settlement. But if you have a larger debt and it's going to be difficult for you to pay, you should know that those collections agencies, they're going to be happy getting paid even if they don't get paid that full amount, because they only paid, maybe 5 to 10% of what that amount was. So if you owed $1,000 and they only paid 50 or 100 bucks for it, and you settle for 500 or 600 bucks, they're going to make a profit, and you're going to, have gotten off, paying less than you actually owed, and really the only one that ends up not getting what they were originally owed was whoever that original lender was, that original credit card company, or whoever it is. So you have the ability to settle with the collection agencies for less than what is actually owed, and they can still end up being happy. And the older the debt is, the more likely it is that they're going to settle, because after 7 years, these debts that you have, if they're written off, they're going to fall off your credit report and they're not going to be part of your credit score anymore. So if the debt is a little bit older, there's going to be more motivation for a collections agency to want to make a deal than if it is fairly new and they still have a while to try to harass you and get these collections from you. Now, one thing you don't want to do, though, is you don't want to get yourself in a place where you sort of treat a collections agency the way you would treat a credit card company, meaning they say, oh, well, you owe us $1,000 or $2,000, you got to start paying us. And every time you pay them, they say, oh, well, we just added some more interest because you didn't pay it all off. And it gets into this cycle that goes on, forever and ever, because these companies want to make money, and they don't make money from the majority of these accounts they buy. So they find people that will do some paying. They'll do whatever they can to add extra fees and charges on there to keep getting money from you. So what you want is, if you are going to settle with a collections agency, either pay off or settle it for less than the full amount, what you want is something in writing that says, okay, I have a loan of $2,000. If I pay off, $900 of it, this is going to be the end of it, and you are going to report to the credit bureaus that I have paid this, paid this balance. And it's either going to be, they paid it, settled for, less than the full amount, or you can even negotiate, something that says on your credit report that it was paid in full, even if technically you did not pay what the full amount was. If the collections agency is willing to take less than the full amount, then they may, as part of that negotiation, say that it is paid in full. But you want all of this in writing, and you don't want them to string you along forever. You want it to be, I'll make one payment, or I'll make 2 or 3 payments and then be done, and you will take it off my credit report. Otherwise, they will try to string you along forever and take more and more money from you, and you'll never ever hear the end of them. So get everything in writing here. When you do pay, make sure you are not giving a collections agency any access to your bank account. So you want to pay them either through a money order or a cashier's check that is sent by certified mail. Some people would say that you could use a dedicated debit card, where you actually get a debit card exactly for the amount of money that you owe, and that is sent to them, or the card number is given to them, and then you just don't ever use it again. So it doesn't have access to your bank account. It's just a prepaid card, especially for that particular thing. You don't want them to have access to your bank account, obviously, because once they have access to your bank account, they can start trying to get money taken out of it and say that you owe them a debt, and that this is their legal process to get that money from you. So you don't want to be in that situation. So finally, after all of this, we're talking about kind of how to deal with the collections companies and how it's going to affect your credit score. But one thing you have to remember above all is that the current loans, credit cards, whatever, current debts that you have, current accounts that you have open at this point, since you've had this past charge off, at this point, what is current and is in good shape is more important than what is old and wasn't paid off. So before you worry about paying off what's in collections or whatever, what you have to do is make sure that you are staying current on what you have now, because you'd rather have something sitting in collections that is, aging and getting older and eventually could even fall off your credit reports than putting your priority on what is in collections and letting something else, go bad, to have late payments or have something else even get charged off in a, an account that you have currently. So make sure you've got your eyes on the prize in terms of what is the priority here to pay for, and the collections agency is on the back burner. If you can, if you can pay them and you can come to a settlement with them where it goes, where it shows up on your credit report, then that's great. but make the other stuff your priority here. So that is pretty much it. So, you're not going to get a magic bullet here on your credit score if you pay off these collections agencies. You've already caused some damage, and the only way it's really going to get better is over time by you using the credit and other loans that you may have in a wise way to get your credit score to go up. But there is an upside to, trying to deal with the money that you owe to collections agencies if you can do it with the money that you have or the money that you are making. So that is it. Thanks for watching. Please go to proudmoney.com where we talk about other personal finance topics, and we do credit card reviews and all sorts of other fun stuff too. Thanks for watching. Bye.